there's patterns of signals or buying signal versus red flag. That's always what's happening when you're being assessed. And that's why everyone hates interviewing, because you know you're being assessed and you know you're commoditized. So if you reduce and overcome red flags and then supply positive signals in abundance and with credibility, that's when people buy. That's all selling is. That's what interviewing is. You're selling yourself in. You're going through a buying journey.
Hey, this is Gareth Webb, and you're listening to Breakout, a show that cuts through the hiring noise. Here, you'll get an unfiltered view on what early and growth stage companies are doing so that you can take their best practices, processes, and frameworks and implement them to help you build teams more confidently.
Hello and welcome to episode 21 now. 21, that was our original target. There's a fact that was floating around when we started, and it's 99% of people give up before 21 episodes. So if you make it to 21 episodes, there's only 1% of the global podcast, creators that are left. So 21 was our original target as like our minimum. If we got to that point, we should have done like a celebratory thing or sent you a drink at least, but maybe next time. But no, so in this episode, we're going to be looking at something very, very topical, I think, something that's going to be particularly useful given the current climate. And that's going to be looking at building the perfect resume in the midst of all of these layoffs. So for anyone who has been affected by the layoffs, hopefully this will be pertinent. And for those that haven't, if you're looking for a new job anyway, or looking to, to progress, this is going to be very, very useful for you as well. But I will just let my guest introduce themselves.
Thank you very much. Yeah, congrats on number 21. So my name is Gareth Webb. I'm the founder and CEO of Outscout. We're a technology talent matching business based out of Austin, Texas. We work with all kinds of technology companies, hardware, software, internet, marketplace. We cover the entire US market and actually quite a bit into Europe as well at the moment. So Israel, UK, mainland Europe, largely companies based here in the US, venture backed, private equity backed, and some public enterprise entities. And we really focus on really what their most important hires are. So we are not a search firm. Like we leave the C-suite alone. We focus on hiring what we categorize as critical hires. So it could be that, you need a software engineer or one account executive, or you need to build a team, or you're just constantly hiring throughout the year at that mid to senior level. So senior individual contributors, managers, directors, VPs. We target what we categorize as like the strongest part of the market, the most in-demand, attractive professionals. And there's quite a lot of nuances to that. But yeah, we work with a lot of companies that are making hires where they just can't go to market and get the hires coming in. But we also do have two-way matching. So we are always targeting the best technology talent to come to our platform, sign up, be approved. And then we look to sort of make sure that they're filtered through to the right opportunities. So yeah, very much embedded in the venture, private equity space, very much embedded in the technology landscape from seed stage through to public technology, like large global companies.
Which I guess sort of perfectly places you or perfectly positions you for the current, I guess, conversation or current market conditions. So do you want to just maybe to follow up on that, just sort of give us a bit of a rundown of the current market conditions? I know like everyone will have seen Google layoffs, Facebook layoffs, but do you want to just give us a bit of a rundown of the current market conditions?
It's honestly wild, which is a very US term that I've picked up, but that is what it is. And it's been that way since March of 2020, right? So coming up 3 years, like the market's just been yo-yoing all over the place. But let's take the last 12 months. So, we had the sort of insane environment of 2021. And then March, April 2022 was when it all started to unravel. Stock markets corrected from massively overinflated valuations. Interest rates were not like incrementally increased. So thanks to all the central banks and for doing that, but just hiking them drastically at a terrible time. So and then obviously Russia. So like the whole thing has meant that you then had Sequoia like produce that email to their founders and their portfolio companies saying basically like batten down the hatches, let's get conservative. This is going to be grim. And then lots followed. So there's been this domino effect of bad news, bad sort of structural changes to the financial macroeconomic environment. And so what you then started having was layoffs last year. So they started in April, May in the US. I think it sort of takes a while to ripple through the market and then hit Europe, but I think they started rippling through and hitting Europe in sort of summer, autumn time, winter last year. So I think Q4 was brutal, right, for everybody. So yeah, you just seen this strange set of conditions where financially everyone's feeling it anyway. Then there's the kind of like contagion of fear around the availability and the cost of capital. Therefore, there's layoffs. And it's all basically built on 5 to 10 years prior of just easy fundraising and businesses growing to grow, not growing to build a return necessarily. So yeah, and then I would say, look, in the last 3 months, it's kind of continued. There's been more layoffs. Companies that did their layoffs did more layoffs. Funding's taking longer to happen. But amongst all of that nasty backdrop is actually some very positive stuff still going on. So like we had the most live new positions built into our platform last week, probably for 6 months. Companies are hiring. Funding is happening. Everything is just less hyped and it's a lot quieter. So companies are hiring. Even some of the companies that are making layoffs are hiring still for replacements or other areas that just, they've made cuts where they feel they've needed to make cuts and save money. But hiring is happening very selectively. It's happening more slowly, more thoughtfully, which I don't really have a problem with. And people are truly dialing in on value and quality of the hires they're making rather than just hiring for hiring's sake. So hiring for hiring's sake is gone. The market is such that there's plenty of hiring going on. It's just, and that's why we're talking today, right? You have to show that you're very, very good and you are worth every ounce of your compensation to get hired into a very good opportunity.
I was going to just pick up on a point. I think we previously had a discussion. I think the phrase you had used, or the phrase you chose, was that a lot of these legacy companies or just companies in general have got fat. They got lazy and they got fat in the sense that perhaps there was overinflation in certain departments, like you mentioned, and essentially they're going through this phase of realizing that perhaps business could be a lot more streamlined, a lot more efficient. There are tools out there that are going to help them be more efficient, which means they're trimming some of the fat, which is, like you said, you get that instance of layoffs, but they're also hiring because they're re-optimizing their current headcount.
There's some brutal truths to all of this. Yeah, fat, bloated, inefficient. What growth means nothing unless the revenue follows it. And ultimately business owners or shareholders want visibility on a return, and then, liquidity is key, cash is key. So yeah, it's all hands on deck. It's, one of the terms we've seen over here that we quite like and we've used is like a return to rigor. It's like, okay, if we're going to hire, is everybody already in the business doing their job particularly well and maxed out? Like, I don't think that's the case. I think the world got pretty soft after COVID and, well-being is important, but like you can only have well-being if the house is in order. And, I think people sort of were too soft about what work really meant and what performance really meant. And so there's some good things coming out of this without a doubt if you've got the stomach for it. And so, yeah, it's a return to rigor. It's a trimming. It's is this hire going to make an impact? Is everybody else in the business truly maxed out? Like, do we need to add more bodies and another line onto the P&L? And if we don't, let's not do that.
Okay, so to sort of follow up on that, you mentioned that there are still plenty of opportunities to be had. And I think in the last recession, big financial crisis, 2008 or whatever, the companies like Uber and Airbnb were sort of formed. So there are still plenty of good opportunities out there, but obviously a market that's potentially being flooded by certain types of role. Let's hypothetically just say sales, marketing, that sort of stuff. There is perhaps more emphasis or at least more focus that's going to need to be given to building your resume, crafting your CV in order to increase the odds of success in terms of finding a new role, given that you're up against hundreds, thousands of people for every single role. So you also mentioned something to me yesterday about this hidden truth or misnomer about people avoiding hiring those that have recently been laid off. So do you want to just touch on that? Like, is it true?
100% true. I hate to say it. Like, I don't agree with it. It's changing because the first wave of layoffs was 2020 with COVID. And that was just like, for some companies, there's a good excuse to get rid of people, non-performers, or change the shape of the organization. Or, there was like the furloughing in the UK, layoffs in the US, rehiring very quickly. So we tried to say to people, look, take it on a case by case, look at the person. What did they do before their current company? How long were they at the company? There's lots of reasons why layoffs happen. In the last year, I think everybody's knows there's absolutely great talent, unfortunately, has been caught up in layoffs. So we're not for a minute saying that this is like everybody, but there's a lot of companies that obviously don't advertise this fact, don't talk about it, but they don't want to see inbound candidates who've been laid off for certain positions. And there's a lot of reasons why, like career risk, credibility risk, internal reputation. When someone makes a hire, they always want to sort of showcase the hire, don't they? Like there's a lot of that, hey, look, this is the new person we got. And everybody's like, oh, wow, they're great. And I think it's very, very tough on the individuals. The way it's been carried out over here in the US and probably in Europe as well is pretty terrible at times, just like switching people off. And, so that's that whole thing, which can't make people feel very good. But people are realizing that, you have to look at the individual, not the circumstance they've been caught up in. What did they do before? What are they capable of doing? Like, where are they at in their career trajectory? So there is a lot of education on our side to say, yes, they've been laid off. This is why, they're at this company before. These are the achievements that they've been responsible for. And I think everyone's sort of softening on that. I'm not saying it's gone. Like a lot of companies still would really prefer not to hire mid to senior, more senior impact hires, unless they are plucked out of another job and doing very, very well. That's still kind of like a lot of the mindset here. So it can be negated. You've just got to be prepared. I think as a candidate, you've got to be really prepared to like have your story and your, what your sell polished and ready.
Yeah, I guess not a very nice metaphor for it is got me thinking about crash damaged cars, right? No one wants to buy a crash damaged car. And I think it's perhaps mentally people think, right, you were laid off. You were obviously laid off for a reason. That's your immediate thought process, perhaps wrongly so, like you said. So it's how you, like you said, how you can better position yourself, better sell yourself, better market yourself to ensure that any of your potential, employers understand that, it was out of your control, essentially. And it's market
and I think like it can happen at the smaller end. So we've got somebody with one of our clients interviewing at the moment. He was brought in as an SVP of like growth, so marketing and sales. Prior to that, he was at bigger companies selling millions of dollars worth of software, went to this startup on the promise of funding. Maybe the question there might be like, okay, did you join a little too soon? We'll never really know. But, as always, the temptation is the sooner you get into a business, the better you do in terms of your equity or the return you may get. And they didn't get the funding. It didn't come through and then they just couldn't keep it. So, you look at the pattern recognition that has to go on prior to that moment was he's a very, very, very capable, credible, successful salesperson. So, we're looking at patterns, and that's really what people are doing, right? Is when they're interviewing you, there's patterns of signals of, buying signal versus red flag. That's always what's happening when you're being assessed or interviewed, which that's what's happening. And that's why everyone hates interviewing, because you're being assessed and you're commoditized. So if you can reduce and overcome red flags and then supply positive signals in abundance and with credibility, that's when people buy, right? Like that's when people do anything in life. So that's all selling is. That's what interviewing is. You're selling yourself in. You're going through a buying journey, and people have to know, yes, okay, they were laid off, but look what happened to that company. Here's the link. Here's the evidence. Here's the post from the CEO. Like there's lots of things you can get now to sort of back things up. But then the flip side is you have to say, right, and here's all the great things I've done. Here's customer references. Here's employer references. Here's peer references, investor references. whatever references, that is just like a stack of good stuff versus, yeah, look, this happened, it was shitty. I'm not going to sit there and lick my wounds. I'm getting on with it. And I think that's the other thing. It's the tone and like the attitude is what people buy. So if you're there like feeling sorry for yourself and it's evident in your body language and your tone of voice, that's what people don't want to bring in, right? They don't want bringing in negativity. So you have to have a look in the mirror, like dust yourself off, like all the kind of sports cliches and just move on. Like there's nothing good about dwelling on past happenings.
On the topic of not dwelling on those part of the past, then in looking forward, let's move on to the portion of talking about building, crafting perfect resume, and basically increase your chances of success winning. So I think we're going to break this down into 5 sort of key areas. The first that you guys, as part of your vetting, every single day you look for is non-jumpy. So do you want to just cover everything that sort of goes through your head when you're vetting in terms of non-jumpy?
Startup land in Silicon Valley over the last 10 years is like, if you did 2 to 3 years per job, people don't have an issue with that, right? It's like, you could have done very well out of that, like vesting your stock options, move to the next big thing, like collect all this equity in various startups, like definitely some strategy there for folks. But really, if it's like you got sub 2 year moves continuously, it's not that it's nothing other than what can you actually achieve in a short period of time. The answer is not much, really. Like, especially if you're in sales. Let's take sales as a function. It takes, we interviewed a chief product officer, one of our customers recently, and he was like, it takes you a year to bed in and understand product, customers, culture, and really it takes 1 to 2 years of day-to-day work to become valuable to an organization, just knowing it, the customers knowing you, building up traction. But if we take sales, a year of getting in and building up pipeline, you're not necessarily, for enterprise sales or bigger ticket sales, you're not closing a whole lot in your first 6 months, realistically. But you should be closing quite a lot in your second 6 months. Second year is when you should be going like gangbusters, and third year, even more so. So, the whole, I don't know who first said the quote, but like everybody overestimates what they can do in a year, and they underestimate what they can do in 10 years. Like that's just compounded interest of time. I've noticed that from being here for 4.5 years and being in different jobs within my own business. And like time is the thing that like everyone has. And so how you use the time, what you do in the time is a big validator in terms of your decision-making process and how successful you can be. Nearly everybody that's very, very successful has done the same thing for years and years and years and years, right? Like the 10,000 hour thing or whatever. But the non-jumpiness is really a measure of grit. So grit is about enduring. Grit's not like, oh, I'm really tough. Grit is like, can you stay at something for a long period of time through highs and lows and good markets and bad markets? So our customers who are doing hard things, building complex products, selling complex products in choppy waters, want to know that that person is resilient and consistent and can like outweather or outlast tough conditions. And so we do look for people with like, I'd say if you've got a 3 to 5 year stint in the last 5 years, you're considered very robust, right? Like, and if you've got 3 years and 3 years, very robust. 2 years, 2 years, 2 years, it starts to get a little bit like, for sales specifically, I'm saying here, like, okay, do you know what you want to do? And can you be really great at it? Like you can get a sales job and do 2 years, but can you be great at sales? I'd argue you need to do a 3 to 5 year stint somewhere to really maximize that opportunity, whether it's as an individual contributor or whether you end up leading a team, building a team, running a business, owning a P&L. Like they're all things that once you get to exec level or director level, like if you can't show that you can run a business or a P&L or like lead and endure, like you're not going to be considered for the top opportunities, which obviously pay the most and are potentially the most lucrative. So you have to give evidence of grit and stamina so that you can become as valuable as you potentially should be, like fulfill your potential, I'd say. So yeah, that's what we mean by non-jumpy. And that's why.
And if people think, okay, right, I fall into that bucket of sub 3 years, let's say, maybe in the past couple of roles or within that 5-year period, I think you said, if you've got sub 3 years in the last 5 years with 2 roles, what can they do to try and counter that? How can they position it? What can they say? What can they look to deep dive? Like, what can they bring to the table to say, no, I am resilient. It's just that this happened.
I've been there, so I get it. I think you have to acknowledge it and be like, right, okay, do I have 1 to 2 year moves for the last 5 years? Is damaging your kind of brand equity, your personal brand, your reputation, your resume, right? So if the job you're in now isn't optimal, perfect, you don't love it, but it's okay, can you change it? Like, by staying where you are, can you change your spec? Can you take on more responsibility? Can you own something else? Can you help to take something off the plate of your boss or the founder or the exec team? Do something that makes it either just more bearable to stick around for another year or 2. Yeah, there is the argument like life's too short. If you can't do that, fine. But if you can, then do that. Like, go and figure out a way to make life more enjoyable. I'm sure that there's all companies out there that would like more social proof and more engagement with community. Like, go and build community, go and interview customers, go and set up a TikTok site, whatever. Like, do something that's like linked to your job that would make your day job more varied, but makes you allows you to envision being there for longer. If you can't bear it there, then really think like the next role, like, do I need to minimize some of the variance? Like, should I go to a bigger company where potentially like I am feeling more stable and there's more lateral opportunities to move into different functions or different teams? So mobility is one thing. So you can create mobility, like I just said before, like doing something else that's like attached to your job, or you can get actual mobility in terms of like a shift in team or function in your career, but allows you to stay somewhere for like 3, 4, 5 years. So I think it comes back down to a little bit of like, we haven't really talked about this, but it's a big thing that nobody really does. And I think people should be taught about this when they're younger, is like visualizing actually your career out, like the track of your career, and putting pen to paper, setting goals, thinking about what do I want to get out of the next 12, 24, 36 months and 5 years, like committing that goal, visualizing it, committing to paper, and then reverse engineering like the action points. Hardly ever speak to people that do that.
I was going to say that's interesting, because one of the interview questions I always ask is, I always say, right, this might sound cliche, but what do you want to achieve in the next 2, 5, 10 years? If they can't answer it, it's almost like, well, why don't you know what you want to be, where you want to be in 10 years? It might not, maybe not the exact role, but I sort of said to myself, by the time I'm 30, I want to be in senior management in marketing. So I knew that I had to do something in order to get there. So that's, I 100% understand. Yeah, that's massively valuable.
People just either don't know how to do it, they've never been taught how to do it, or they're not particularly visual. Like a lot of people are not very visual beings, right? They're all becoming more visual because we use apps, and, you know, video is a lot more kind of part of what we do. But like, it's just like, whether you call it journaling or you build out a spreadsheet, is just, if you don't have, especially as a salesperson, if you don't have a quarter plan or a yearly plan, like, that's bad, because like, how are you going to hit your number? And if you don't have like a 2, 3, 5, I think some people can't look at 10 years. I definitely do. Like, I've got a plan now for me for 5 years time. And then I've got benchmarks and goals every sort of 6 to 12 months in between there. And I'm like, right, okay, what do I need to do? Because that all basically spurs you into action. So I think, if someone can't answer that question, it's a very good interview question. Like, where do you want to be in 2 years, 5 years? If you join us, things go well, like, what does that mean for you? I bet 9 out of 10 can't answer that question very well.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. I think, like you said, I think some people are afraid of, it's almost like they see it as Everest, right? They see it as it's too big of a mountain for me to climb. I just want to focus on the next year. But if you don't have that longer term vision, then you're going to constantly be focusing on the little years, and it's not necessarily going to add up to very much, because you've got no strategy behind your career path.
Without doubt, like it gives you, so the strategy piece, which then drives the tactics or the execution. And, it might be like, right, to get there, I actually haven't got all the skills. So I need to go and upskill. I need to read about this. I need a mentor. I don't have the endurance to get there. It could be as simple as that. And it's like, well, I need to use my time better. And then how do I structure my day? So yeah, I think if you're interviewing, going back to interviewing, if you're interviewing and you can't tell the story and you can't relay your goals, again, like that's a really good thing. When I'm interviewing people, they're like, look, I've got this ambition and these goals, I want to do these things. To get there, I need to do this. Here's why I will be working my ass off to do this. That if it all ties together, that's kind of what you want to hear when you're interviewing somebody. That the story makes sense, the motivations align, the actions back up the story, and you can read that in a resume or a LinkedIn profile, and then you can hold people accountable as well. Like when you're hiring somebody and you're bringing them in, you can say, look, you said all these things. This is what you said you wanted to do. I want to hold you accountable to that and help you. And I think it's just, I think some people deem it as like, oh, I'm private, so I don't want to share my goals. But everybody I know who's very successful is very goal oriented, and they actually do share their goals. Like they don't brag about stuff, but they definitely say, oh, yeah, I'm trying to do this because I want to get to here. And that goes for like a lot of my very good friends and customers and founders I know. Like everybody's very goal oriented and playing the sort of medium to long term.
100%. Okay, so that's number one, the non-jumpy, the grit, the durability, that sort of long-term strategy. Number two, evidence of promotion or evidence of success.
It's a real hard one, this, because promotions are great because you can just list them. And if you've been promoted to a team leader or a manager, okay, who did your team lead? Who did you manage? What did you manage? Say why you got that promotion. Like that's, again, linking the story through with data points. Like let's just take sales again. Say I joined Selligence as a BDR or an SDR, booked the most meetings in my first year, wanted to own a quota, became an AE. For 2 years back to back, I was 107 and 124% of quota. I earned X amount of money, decided that I wanted to spearhead a new geography or a new team. So I got promoted to this. And here's what I did there as well. Like opened 10 new enterprise accounts in Germany or whatever that is, right? Everything is like data linked, pops off the page. Like you don't need a whole bunch of words to say that. You just have bullet points of like, did this happened, did this happened, got promoted, did this. When you see lots of profiles and resumes, which we do, and you see a really concise, clear, like someone's been somewhere for 5 years and done like lots of like revenue linked achievements or business building achievements, it is so utterly refreshing and clear that person knows what they want. They know how to sell. They can sell themselves, and it's very easy for those people to do well and get lots of positive feedback or job offers. But it's very rare. Lots of people just very, very bland, wordy, non-data driven, non-concise, pros and verse life stories. That's not what this is all about. This is all about just think of it like a product specification or executive summary or a business plan, like just bullet points. That's really what your resume should say, with like deal examples, revenue examples. That's what like hiring for sales is really about. And so, yeah, I think like if you can just show the evidence, again, like customer references is another proof of success, testimonials, proof of success, renewals, whatever it may be, spell it out, like get it written in a nice, concise format so that you can just talk about it, show it to people, take it with you. Just it's about preparation as well. Like we haven't really talked about that, but like obviously going into finding a new job or thinking of a career change or company change, if you prepare really well and like have your one pager ready to talk about, like that will stand you in very good stead. But yeah, like everybody wants winners, whether that's like a really good, even if you're hiring like a more junior graduate marketing assistant, like you want somebody that can show they're successful and capable and they're going to go off and like do as much as they can without having to take your time and energy. So if you can see evidence of that, whether it's through internships, side hustles, entrepreneurial endeavors, like all those things give you, again, like the signal and the evidence of like, yeah, this person is filling me with confidence that I'm going to work well with them and they are a winner. They want to go and like strive for success. That's especially in sales and marketing. I think like it's all about results. So if you can talk about the results through your career, you give yourself a far better opportunity of going into negotiations on a positive note, not on the back foot.
Yeah, I was going to say for marketing, I've always recommended, I've always told people that one of the first things you need to be doing when you start a new job is setting up a dashboard where month on month you are recording everything that you have done. So over the past 6 months, I know how many inbound leads I've generated for the business. Those inbound leads have converted to this many demos. Of those demos, we have closed one this amount on it, 500K in pipeline, whatever you want to call it. But if you don't have that, you're just shooting yourself in your foot. And at any point in that 3, 4, 5 year tenure of that business, you're going to continuously have to sell yourself back to the business from time to time to show your worth, right? You've got OKRs, your quarterly, monthly, whatever. So you should be doing the reporting anyway. So it's there for you.
Yeah, I mean, that just helps everybody, doesn't it? Like, your investors can see what value you've brought to the table. They can see, like, should we be doubling down here on certain marketing channels? Like, you can go and ask for more budget. When it comes to end of year review and you're asking for a raise or you're asking for a bonus, you can sit there and sitting there saying, "Oh, I've worked really hard and I've done really well." It just means absolutely nothing to a business leader or an investor. It's like, show me the data or bring an exec summary with, like actions, results, P&L. It cannot be argued with unless you've got a really irrational, delusional set of investors or business leader. Most are not. Most are like, yeah, we love these numbers. You've done a great job. You brought in $1 million of revenue. Of course, we're going to pay you this bonus, or of course, we're going to give you some sort of like increase and promotion. And it's probably just like for your own sanity, just tracking your efforts and the results and knowing it's the same as tracking everything, like, physical output, calories, like all that stuff. You do that, like, you get in better shape. You track your business, the business is in better shape. And yeah, I think a lot of people don't invest in themselves enough to put themselves in a positive position for these kinds of conversations. So, doing it as you go is great, because then if something does happen, either like you decide you cannot stay at your company, or the worst happens, you get laid off. If you've got that whole personal dashboard, as you call it, or like your OKRs or your tracking of your efforts and your results, that then all of a sudden kind of becomes your CV or resume. And it's just another way of differentiating, which is really important.
I think I like the point you made there about the calories. People who are into fitness, running, cycling, whatever it is, people who have got that mentality, that mindset of recording things so they can improve. I think naturally that they're going to find this very, very easy. But okay, so the same question we asked on the first one: if you have not done any of that for the past few years, how can you show proof of success, or how can you best position it to show success if you, for some reason?
I mean, there's two things here, right? One is, if you haven't been successful, be honest with yourself. Why not? Like, are you in the wrong job? Are you in the wrong business, wrong industry? Like, there's a lot of people in tech at the moment who are in tech because it would become a cool thing to get into and talk about, right? It's like, oh yeah, I'm in tech. Yeah, I'm software sales, or I'm customer success. And that's just true. Like, it's become this thing. It's like, oh great, you're in tech. Not so cool anymore. I've always thought life sciences and pharmaceuticals are pretty cool. People who generate like far more impactful things to the human race than software that allows you to save time and money. But like, that's kind of where we've ended up. I'm very interested in technology, always have been, and design and products. So therefore, I think, again, it's like the honesty of like, I'm going to do what I'm more interested in because I'll put the time in, I won't make excuses, and I'll just get better at it. Lots of people need to, like, are you actually a salesperson? Can you sell? What type of salesperson are you? Are you a new business, like hunter, closer? Are you more of a channel and partnerships person that can build and develop relationships that way? Or are you like a really nice, polished, organized customer success type person? So there's that to think about. So if you don't have successes, you've either been unlucky or you've put yourself in the wrong situation and you're not working hard enough. If you have successes and you're not necessarily sure about how to like package them and discuss them, you have to do a bit of diagnosis and go back through your career and look at like, okay, when was I feeling like I was doing the best? What happened then? I know for the most part, every single deal I've ever done, like especially the more chunky business like deals that I've closed, And I think good salespeople are the same. Like they all know when they were successful, why, which deals they did with who, how they did those deals. So I think you have to sort of like go back and just start with something, which is putting pen to paper and like bullet point out, like where do I feel like I've been the most successful? Or ask your peers, like, you know, when do you think, like, what do you think I'm best at? When was I most impactful? Or former business leaders or bosses? Because bosses tend to be pretty, like former bosses as well, will be honest with you. But I think just like, if you haven't got the success to really say, yeah, like here's what I've done and here's why I'm valuable, and you've been in your career for like 5-10 years, then maybe it's time to be really honest with yourself and like treat this pivot or like fork in the road as a time to be true to yourself and really think about like, okay, do I want this journey to continue or is it time to change? Because how I measure success, I'm not feeling like I've really got those things to talk about. If you do, then you just have to, like I said, document them, explain them, convert like the wins into like numbers, like we said, like, you know, like action and outcome and the numbers behind that, like revenue percentages, all the numbers behind the deals, especially if we're talking about sales, kind of come back to sales because that's what we're kind of focusing on. But yeah, I think if you could have the qualitative, the quantitative proof of success, and if you haven't been sort of taking note of that, start doing it. And then maybe like, even if you don't need a resume now and you're happy with your job, do it anyway. Like you said, like go and build out a list of wins and successes and things that you've probably not done so well, because that's quite a healthy exercise. And then become a bit mindful of like where you need to work on yourself.
No, and some of the bits you were talking about there in terms of, you know, giving scores to stuff or attributing numbers to things, I think that leads us quite nicely into the next one, which is talking about impact, because I think impact could potentially be, it's kind of similar to evidence or proof of success, but I think impact to a business isn't necessarily just financial impact or, you know, fully data driven. It could be impact in terms of what you bring to the table in terms of team building, in terms of management. So the next one we've got on the list is impact.
I mean, if we talk about like, you know, how people, I think the last few years have been very difficult for some people, personality types, if they've been more remote, to showcase impact. And I kind of ask for it from my team all the time. I'm like, look, I don't want to be the one to say, hey, let's do a meetup, play pickleball, go for a happy hour. Like, I don't want to do it because I feel like it. Pickleball. I think it's like paddle. You have a padel. Is that blowing up in the UK? Kind of like short tennis. It's short tennis.
Is it? I was going to say the small tennis rackets that are solid.
It's like racquetball, small rackets that are solid, and like a plastic airflow ball. It's obscenely fun. We're obsessed with it. It's kind of our thing. So like once a month we hire a court for an hour or two and just play each other. And actually thinking about, see, this is a good conduit into conversation. We're thinking about, could we start like a corporate pickleball league in Austin? Because there's like for startups or technology companies, because you just can't get a court. That's the problem, is they're always booked. I think, it's paddle's been growing hugely in the UK. Pickleball's the fastest growing sport in the US. It's basically like everyone likes tennis, but tennis is very difficult and you have to be very skillful. Pickleball, you can be an absolute disaster and it's still fun. So
I think this is an interesting one, because when we probably started and said how like impact to the business, people probably weren't thinking, you know, are you the person that sets up a running club at work, a book club at work? Are you the person that is on the wellness committee at work? Which is actually, things people will probably think, that's not really relevant. It's not going to show me as a valuable asset.
We're pretty much distributed at the moment. Outscout, like we were in an office last year. We did more and more days working from home. We meet up at the WeWork once, twice a week for certain meetings, or if people want to go in, they can. It's working very well. But like, what does culture mean? You know, if you're sat on Slack and Zoom, culture's changed. Like, I think everyone cringes a little now when they see, culture is like, oh, we're all in the office and high five when deals get done. Like that can exist and I like it, but it's not where we're at the moment. But we will meet up at pickleball court, like have a few, like have beers if you want to have beers. If not, no worries. But we do like a 3 to 5 pickleball, 2 hours. And it's like everybody loves it because you don't have to play. You can just sit and chat, watch, like listen to music because there's like music on the place we go. And yeah, like that's huge because it starts to define, it's a release valve. You know, you can give pats on the back. You can just like see each other in a different context, which is kind of the bit that's kind of got lost sometimes with being distributed. So yeah, like I started it, but now it's like everyone else is like, oh, hey, when we're doing it again. And, you know, I think a lot of companies don't have anything like that. And what you've got to do is overcome this. I think the British thing is the cringe kind of, oh no, someone's trying to do this. Like, oh, I've got to go to that. And 9 times out of 10, when most people go to anything like that, they go, oh, that was really good. It's just, we get lazy, right? And we're like, oh, I've got to bring a bag of kit, or I've got to get an Uber over there and it's not my way home. Like everyone's got excuses to not do stuff. And that's fine. Like, you know, LinkedIn has created this, you know, you've got to make sure you please everybody. You cannot fucking please everybody. It's impossible. Like I have tried and I've given up. What we do now is we say, do what you want. Like if you want to come, that's cool. We won't hold it against you if you don't. If if someone wants to have a beer, we're not going to frown at it. If you want to have a soda water or a Coca-Cola, that's fine. Like I think everyone's very accepting of, we all want different things out of life. But then you also by trying to not do stuff to include everybody, you make it pretty boring for the majority who are like, yeah, I'd love to go and play pickleball. I'd love to go to a happy hour. So, you know, or office beers, like, you know, I can see your office in the background. I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of do miss bits of being in the office where on the Thursday, you know, you have a refrigerator of beers and you have a beer. Like it's just different when you're at home or in a WeWork. So if you can, you know, yes, if you're great at selling and you're valuable that way, it doesn't mean you're the perfect corporate citizen either, by the way. Like if you're an a-hole or you just don't get involved at all, but you also don't need everybody to be bringing these social ideas to the business. So if you're good at closing, run a closing workshop and train people on closing. Like I'm good at closing. I train my team on closing. Here's how to close better. Here's how to manage a process to have a more predictable close. Other people are like Jake, who works for us, is insanely organized, irritatingly organized. So he's in charge of all forecasting, data, CRM, workflows, processes. He loves it. I love it because it's like, it's in the best hands. And so everyone's got something like that. Emily, who's one of our talent partners, she's not long out of college. Like she joined us as an intern. She's been with us a year and a half. She's incredibly good. She just off her own back set up like this new email sequence for candidates that weren't engaged from who dropped off. And it was really, really powerful. We got a new client as a result of it. Like, so that everyone's got a skill or a thing that they can own that makes the business, like that magnifies the business. So impact is yes, it's about do your job very well. That's the basics, right? That's what you're there to get paid for. If you want to like grow and like build the equity of the business and add to culture and drive what culture means in your business. And we talked a little bit about this the other day. Like really there's only one thing culture is, and that's in business is like performance. Like how do you improve the performance? But there's lots of things that support really good performance. So yeah, just do something. Like pick one small thing, whether it's training or prospect emails or, you know, pickleball, run club, book club, do a business book critique, whatever it is, do something and test the water. And if it falls flat, then fine. Just, you know, it didn't land, try again or do something different. But I would say like, if you really care about where you work and you love it and you want to stick around, do something. Like your founders and your leaders will love you for it.
I was going to say it's very well timed because we set up Selligence Yoga, which is once a month. We've got one of my partner's friends actually is a yoga instructor, so we've got her coming into the business and we do it in the boardroom, which is quite funny. We get rid of all the tables, we do yoga, and I myself am just getting into running. I'm into the gym massively, so I've been doing it for 10 years, but I want to try running, get outdoors, and just improve my general fitness. So I'm going to be setting up a running club at work. So once a week on lunch, bring your kit in, go for a run. We've got a shower. Like, you know, if you want to shower after, fine, whatever. But we're going to go for a run around the park because we are literally by Cardiff Castle in the park. We're going to do Selligence Book Club because I finish a book and Lewis, who's sitting next to me, he's reading the second book that I've given him now. And we're just going to set up a team channel and swap books and stuff because we want to get people into the office more. We want to get people enjoying like the outdoors whilst at the office. So Yeah, it's weirdly timed, this conversation, that we're sort of, working on all of that.
Yeah, I mean, look, just to say on that, it's great that you're doing that because, so there's in Austin for 6 months of the year, it's brutally hot. So we can't go for a run necessarily in the middle of the day. So it's okay, can we do some stuff in the morning or, go onto the river and do some stand-up paddleboarding or something like that. There's stuff. Sometimes the team, I haven't done this, but they met up on a Saturday and gone paddleboarding together, which is nice. Love to see it. But if you can say to people, look, if by coming back into the office and you want people in the office more, you're not change your desk all day and let's use the daylight hours to go for a run. And then that makes everybody more productive in the afternoon. I think that's the great thing about the change in the world. When I graduated, if I had tried, I don't even think we got a full lunch hour, or, it's if you weren't back at 1 o'clock, you were getting spoken to. So going to the gym was problematic because if you gym, shower, back, and you push for time. So I think companies have just got to be, really thinking about what they want their culture or what supports their culture development. So yeah, all those things you're doing are really, really good. I think whoever owns and leads those things, they're resume builders. They're things that you should talk about that they won't necessarily get you the job, but they might get you the job over somebody else, or they might sort of subliminally help the decision makers think this is a doer. This is somebody that's cares about the world around them.
Yeah, it's that more personable, relatable angle. They can see that you're going to get on well with people, or you're going to make people more communicative in work, bring people together. Okay, so we've done non-jumpy, evidence of promotion or success, impact, and our fourth is logos / legitimate businesses.
I mean, there's companies that I think that may have disappeared now. It was definitely the seduction of somebody that's worked at big tech companies Amazon, Amazon, Facebook, the FANG stocks.
Yeah,
right. The LinkedIn profile. Yeah,
I see that mentioned a lot on LinkedIn.
Ex-Google, ex-LinkedIn, ex-Microsoft. I actually think nobody really cares anymore. A lot of our clients are I want someone who is from a seed Series A or Series A, Series B, Series C, did more with less. The legitimate business piece obviously is key. It's okay, were you at a 4-person company that stayed a 4-person company for years, a small family-run business? Maybe that's not going to be the pace of what we're about in a startup where we're very growth-oriented. We're trying to change things. There's lots of uncertainty. We have to change direction quite a lot, which is really annoying for some people. And that's just the way it is in startup land as you're figuring things out. But yeah, I think if I use the word I want to say here is it's not about necessarily not being jumpy. It is about showing grit. It is not about working for Google or Amazon. That can help as part of your portfolio of your career potentially. The ideal is both actually. The thing that our customers love is when somebody has been at Google, Microsoft, Facebook for a few years, gone to a successful startup and shown they can do both. And then that's the holy grail of that person's got the scale where they can manage people, metrics, stakeholders, and they don't just get to have their way all the time. And then they've got into startup land and been successful with minimal resource. And so it's that person's versatile as well. That's what you probably want if you want the perfect resume. Big company and startup, or mid-market and small. That combination is very, very attractive to people because it shows the versatility or adaptability. And
it fits in with that it fits in with that sort of career strategy as well, don't we? In terms of that non-jumpy and the more considered approach in terms of building your career with the ultimate goal of reaching somewhere. If you know the sorts of industries you want to work in, or the skills that need developing, the areas that nothing about and you want to develop, then you'll move to a logo or a company that can help you build that skill, right? So like you said, it's not necessarily that it's, Google, Microsoft, albeit that's great. But if you learn a new form of marketing, let's just say, that you didn't know before, you spent 3 years doing it, and now you're more of a multi-channel T-shaped marketer and you worked for a reputable company, then that's a good thing.
It's amazing. The word I would say that I look for people or our client, I think our clients really look for is robust candidates, robust talent. So robust means you've got a backbone, you know what you want, you know how to get it, you can take feedback well, You're going to stick around through the shitty times. You're going to stick around and, you're not just going to take the wins and bounce. You're going to like ride out the good and the bad. You're robust. You're consistent. You're just a calm operator. I'll go back to Jake. Like I approached Jake. He was working for Abercrombie & Fitch in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio. I liked his profile. He'd worked in product, merchandising, marketing. He'd managed big budgets. He was very thorough. He was very organized. He was very programmatic. He's robust. He's just a robust guy. And I got all that from the profile. It backed up in the interview process and meetings with his follow-up, his work, his language, his demeanor. And he's been an absolute 10 out of 10 hire, like one of the best hires I have ever made, because he showed through the story, through the resume, and through his conduct and the follow-up that he's robust. Because kind of need to be working with what we're doing. Like it's very, like I said, startup land, new business, it's hectic. So yeah, I think like don't obsess over going to a massive well-known brand, but do think about what that logo means for your resume and then what you do with it. And then what do the logos mean to get pieced together? Like one of my friends from Hired, I won't say her name or where she went, but like her resume and profile reads really, really well. Like she went to a really good college, a uni. She worked in a really good search firm. She worked at Hired with me. She's gone on to another like marketplace talent business. Great career trajectory, really smart, really robust, just like an incredible talent. So, piecing things together, you've got to be strategic about it. And you've got to be diligent about like when you make moves and how you make moves in terms of your career options.
Okay, brilliant. So the last one we've got on the list, I guess it kind of links to that number 3 that we touched on, but it's self-investment. So this is the going over and above to develop.
Yeah, and I need a coach. I know that I need a business coach. Can't afford one just yet. I have my investor and business partner is kind of a friend of mine, but we become friends through business. He has a coach. All the best athletes, the people at the very pinnacle of every sport, all have multiple coaches. And it's fairly astonishing to me that lots of executives, founders, and business people actually just don't have coaches or mentors, right? You don't need a coach necessarily. You might need a mentor, an advisor. And so I think if everybody thinks of themselves, if you care a lot about your career and the outcomes of your career and, like you've worked really hard at school, you've gone to uni and worked hard enough to get your degree or very hard, and then you start a company or you're trying to like move through to do better out of life, whatever that means for you, like more freedom, more money, more time, more learning. Don't dabble in it. Like go all in. Like I think you can dabble in self-improvement. Like you can make incremental changes, but you can also make drastic changes. For me, it's like if I don't do 2-3 days a week from home, working on really important stuff without getting interrupted and managing my time well, things fall apart for me because I get pulled into conversations and meetings and discussions because we're small. Being at home allows me to control my time better and own it and manage it more effectively. So I think like that was a big thing I found over the last couple of years was like, I need 2-3 days a week at home. Like it's really important to me to make sure the business is running more smoothly. But yeah, whatever the thing is, right? Like I said, if you're great at building pipeline, but you're not converting, get some help on closing as a salesperson. If you're not particularly patient and you're not good at training people, bring in a trainer to train your team if you don't have that capability. But if you can, try to learn how to be better at training, like maybe train 1-to-1, maybe train in smaller groups, like figure it out. I think everybody's you can spend too long on your weaknesses. And I think, doubling down on strengths is essential, but even those strengths could become superpowers if you amplify them and scale them out. So whatever it is that you need to do to be better, like try and identify it or talk to somebody that can help you identify it. I've started reading fiction again every night before bed, or trying to, because it helps me to disconnect and sleep better. And I don't have weird dreams about work. So I've started making sure that I'm trying to do 30-40 minutes of fiction reading each night just to sort of disconnect more healthily. And that for me is a big piece of self-improvement.
Yeah, it's weird because I've, might have seen it on my LinkedIn, but at the start of the new year, I set myself a goal of reading more days than I don't. So 4 days out of 7 is the minimum. And I have a little notepad next to my bed where I just tally down the number of days that I've read that week. And the reason 4 is because I knew I enjoyed reading and I knew I slept a lot better when I read. I just got into this weird habit of being like, it's 30 minutes that I'd rather spend doing something else. But when I realized I was getting, and I was sleeping worse. I was thinking about work, like just before I literally lie down, and it would be like notification bells, just like bing, bing, bing in my head about work. Whereas reading the book for 30 minutes, as you said, you disconnect, which helps massively with everything else. But I think traditionally people probably think when they talk about self-investment, or I'm not great at that and need to get better, they would almost see that as a negative because they're not good at something. But I would have more respect for someone who identifies a problem area and has a fix for it, has a solution to get better at it. That is more attractive than someone who's like, I'm great at everything. I'm great. I don't need any development.
That is a massive red flag, and you're just like, okay, well, clearly you haven't pushed yourself out of comfort zone ever, because nobody who's successful has never failed. Like, everyone has failed at something because they've been striving. So I think that's really what it is. Like, self-investment to me is like, if you're a candidate, let's say you're a candidate and you're thinking of making a move or you need a job. So your self-investment is, I haven't got around to doing my resume, or, it's not very good, is it? Like, my resume is not amazing. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, Google the perfect 10 resumes or find a resume tool. Like, there's amazing things on out there that can like show you a perfect template. You just literally drop in your points. Like, even on like Macs and PCs, there's templates, they're okay, but there's some amazing ones if you just Google set goals. Like, what are your goals for if you join X type of company? Like, what would you want to get out of that? Now, look, like, it's obvious that we all know this from the last year. You can make plans and then something happens, right? You get smacked in the face with a layoff. That shouldn't change your long-term goal. Like, that should just, if you know you're on the right track anyway, it's a bump in the road. But I think the self-investment thing is, is the resume as good as it can be? Is your LinkedIn profile as good as it can be? Is your headshot like showcasing you in the right way? Does social media all tie in? Like, should that be cleaned up or shut down? Do you have a personal website? Do you have case studies? Do you have customer testimonials? Have you got 2 hours a week to volunteer for a startup and help them build a sales playbook? Like, that could be something you could try doing. That's going to add another talking point to your resume that will make you attractive. It's like, I took time out to help these guys. They raised 500 grand. They're trying to get some initial customers. So I built them a plan, and this is what I've done it for free. Like, you don't have to make yourself a charity, but just, I think you cannot underestimate the numbers of people out there looking for jobs. It's so easy to apply for jobs. If you're applying for a job, you're probably one for sales as well. You're probably, if that job's been live for a week, you could be 1 in 500 people. So how do you cut through? And if you can't self-invest to cut through, then don't even bother, would be my point. Just hang up the gloves and just resign yourself to a life of mediocrity, which is probably not why you got into sales in the first place. So treat yourself like a business is what I'd say, and work on it every day and look at every factor that's happening, every kind of pillar of that business, and optimize it continuously. And that's when you'll multiply your success factors.
I agree completely. I think my Q1 goal was the reading. My Q2 goal is the running, and both of those I've basically dropped in to try and help me disconnect a bit, because I have a tendency to overwork, and when I then get home and sit on the sofa, I continue working. Whether that just be research, watching videos, listening to a podcast, but it's still work. So I'm trying to develop ways that I can switch off, which should, in theory, help me focus more when I am at work, and hopefully I'll be a little bit less tired or whatever. But no, that brings us to the end of the 5 key topics or 5 key sort of parts of the resume. And so we'll just recap quickly. So number 1 was non-jumpy, the durability in role. So showing that you can stick it out through thick and thin. I think we said that the optimal in the last 5 years is that you would want somewhere in the realms of 3 to 5 years out of the last 5 years spent at one company. Number 2 was evidence of promotion or success. We spoke a lot about from day one, really, you should be documenting that success anyway, because it's going to help you in your day-to-day. It's going to help you get promotions. It's going to help you, build a better, I guess, foundation in that role, which is ultimately going to help you in the long term. Number 3 was how you can show impact. And interestingly, we sort of spoke about the ways that you can show impact outside of data. You talked about pickleball, which was something new to me, but whether that's a running club, a book club, a yoga session, or like you said, it could be additional training that you're offering back to the business. How can you show impact to that business that isn't necessarily directly associated with a revenue figure or a inbound lead figure? Number 4 was logos. And it wasn't necessarily that those logos had to be very recognizable or very large companies, but they had to show a consideration that you had a overall strategy in terms of your career. You had a reason for going to that logo, not just because you got a job, it was the first one you got, or because one of your mates worked there or something. It was a considered approach to the logos. And number 5, which we've just sort of finished up, is the self-investment. So anything and everything to better yourself. So I think that's been an awesome 45, 50-minute chat on, what people are looking for, what companies are looking for in terms of that perfect resume. So thank you for joining. I think we've already sort of mentioned that we might do another episode, which is the next step, naturally, which is the actual interview process. So how you can position yourself, how can you sell yourself in the interview to give you the best odds. But no, thank you for the last 45, 50 minutes. I've certainly looked a lot, and it's making me think in the back of my head, should I come to thinking about a new opportunity, what I will be doing with my CV or resume. So no, very much appreciated.
I hope it helps. We're all a work in progress. I think it's kind of like my take on life after the last few years. And, we're never finished. We're never perfect. But like, it's that kind of like intention to improve daily to basically what makes the biggest impact, I think, with people. So yeah, would love to talk more, and hopefully it's helped.
Brilliant. Well, for those that are listening in or watching, I hope you've enjoyed the episode. Tune in for the next episode next week, but thank you for joining.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Breakout. If you want to hear more, make sure to hit subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast to be the first to get notified when future episodes are released. If you like the show or want to share feedback, please leave a review so we can keep improving and share the word with other leaders in the tech talent space. If you have suggestions for topics we should cover, please feel free to reach out to either myself or Gareth.